to Denton's Office, your favorite Commanders YouTube show. If you're not subscribed to the Team 980, make sure you do that on YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter. You see that on the whiteboard at the Denton Day. I have a whiteboard because only important people have whiteboards. It's off-season mode for the Commanders. We are now tasked with figuring out how this team can get better in 2025. And a question that has been asked of me on social media and just put out into the open for Commanders fans to answer: should Washington have a reunion with Chase Young this offseason? Obviously, Chase Young played here. He was drafted here. He is a defensive end. Washington needs defensive ends. Should they make that reunion come to be in the year of our Lord 2025? It's a fascinating question, but it takes about 2 seconds of brain power for me to say no, they should not. Chase Young should not be playing in the Washington Commanders uniform, whatever that uniform looks like, wink, wink, in 2025. He shouldn't. There are a bunch of different reasons for it. There are some reasons that are personal. There are some reasons that are not personal. I do want to make this clear. I like Chase Young. I am rooting for Chase Young in wherever the Chase Young lands. He just should not land here. The football reasons are the reasons we're going to start first. Why would Washington sign him? I understand they need a defensive end. I understand he plays defensive end. But that's basically all that there is. Like, if you take some of the emotional stuff that we will touch on here in a second, if you take some of the emotional stuff out of the equation and the idea, this like Disney Channel-esque idea of a reunion story, if you take all of that and put it to the side and you just look at this from a strictly football basis, this team in Washington is in a window with Jayden Daniels to where you can maximize maybe paying a little bit more money for some guys that are going to be really, really good. Think your Myles Garrett, think your Max Crosby's. Those guys, obviously, you need to go get in the form of a trade, but you get the idea. You're in a window right now where you feel like you can maximize off of not paying Jayden Daniels a lot of money right now, understanding that in a couple of years, you're going to be paying Jayden Daniels a lot of money right now. I would be striving for a little bit more. I would be striving for a little bit more than Chase Young is going to bring to this roster in 2025, because if you look at this just strictly from a football perspective, outside of 2020, his rookie year when he was here, he hasn't been exactly exceptional at getting after the passer, at playing the run. In fact, the one thing that has been his big issue, it was his downfall here, it has been a little bit of an issue in the other places, is that he kind of takes plays off. The motor isn't the greatest in the world on plays that are on the opposite side. In 2020, he was the complete opposite. In 2020, it felt like he was the guy that would be willing to chase down things that went to the opposite side and are now 10, 15 yards down the field. He would be involved in those plays. And then as his seasons has progressed in the NFL, that kind of dissipated. So you take a guy that has not been all that great in the NFL and has a tendency to take plays off. Why would you bring him into an organization that is still in the attempts of reshaping the culture? 2024, obviously, a massive step in the right direction, but you're in the works of reshaping this culture of a once great franchise. Why would you go get a guy that you have a little bit of questions about? Does he fit what the team is trying to do? So the answer to that is a no. I would not go get him. You can't sign Chase Young as a depth piece here. You can sign Chase Young as a depth piece anywhere else in the NFL. You cannot sign Chase Young as a depth piece here. And that's the emotional part of this. Like, if you're just looking at this football-wise, he's not a top defensive end. Your objective should be going and getting a top defensive end. But you can't do the depth bit with Chase Young here because of the emotional side of things. It's important to point out, Chase Young was a member of this roster 14 months ago. This has not been an elongated absence from the two sides. He was traded in November, very early November of 2023. At the point of recording, it is February 2025. It has not been that long where Chase Young has not been here. So therefore, some of the questions, we know that Chase Young did not work well here for reasons that were partly his fault, for reasons that were partly the organization's fault. It was 2020, toward the end of the Dan Snyder regime. It was a tough place to do anything successfully here. Dan sucks. We know that. Ron was tasked with a project that his shoulders could not carry. It was a project that nobody in the NFL could have carried, which is try and make this place look better despite the fact that your owner is in another lawsuit every single day. Impossible, right? So I feel for it. It was impossible for anybody other than Terry McLaurin. It feels like to be really, really good during that time frame. Maybe John Allen and Daron Payne as well, but you get the idea. It was tough for a guy like Chase Young to be good here, but he didn't help that. And it's that brings a little bit of concern. What is the person? I don't know Chase Young. I'm not going to take rumors that I heard during the time and slap them on him and say these are absolutely 100% factual. I don't know that. But I know that he did play a little bit of a factor in it not working out here. So the question then becomes, do you want to bring that guy back into the situation where it did not work? If you're pro Chase Young, you're going to say, Denton, you don't know what he's like now. And you are correct. I don't know what he's like now. But I would tell you that most good people in your life would never see you leave a bad situation and then 14 months later go right back to that situation. You can take that from your perspective as a relationship, as a job. Technically for Chase Young, this is both of those things. You can take that in whichever direction that you want. But if you get out of a bad scenario in your life, you do not go running back to that scenario 14 months later expecting something vastly different. And whether it's fair or unfair to Chase Young, he was the number 2 overall pick here. So coming back at 25, not a swan song, at 25 years old, he can't be depth here. Because you're going to have all the expectations, all of the things that maybe us as fans didn't close off fully when he left, all of the hope that you had about him being what Myles Garrett is. When he comes back, all of those comes flooding back. You know, when he left, you kind of put those away and you thought, we're never going to see him back here. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, it sucks that we missed on him, but it is what it is. The second he comes back at 25 years old, all of those doors open back up again. Emotional wounds as a fan, maybe some emotional wounds for him. Like, it does not become what I would consider to be a healthy scenario at that point. I'm not a therapist. I don't know if you need to be a therapist to know that it wasn't healthy in the early 2020s, right? It just wasn't. So then you take him and you force him back into that situation. I don't think that is conducive to him being successful. I don't think that's great for this organization being successful. He's 25 years old. Let him go flourish somewhere else. He doesn't need to do the bit where he comes back home and tries to be a superstar. It's a lot easier from a mental standpoint to be a superstar at home when you're an NFL player. It just is, because all of the people that saw you on the come up are then ready to run to you when you are back home as a superstar. That is some of the issue that he had here. You are just surrounded by people, good influences and unfortunately bad influences, that have been around you and are within arm's reach of you for as long as you have been living here. So that's the tough bit about it, but it is the bit about it that makes this a definitive no. I would argue no from a football standpoint, but then when you factor the emotional stuff in here, I don't think it's great for him. And it's certainly not great for this organization to bring him back here at 25 years old, the guy that was the number 2 overall pick in 2020, and say, hey, we need you for 20 snaps. Because we know he is not a number 1 defensive end in this league. And anyone that suggests that he could be a number 1 defensive end in this league is pulling what I call a Ron Rivera, which you are then searching for some sort of Disney Channel-esque era that you hope, if E60 or 30 for 30 is still around in a couple of years, you hope it makes its way to something like that. Chase Young shouldn't get here. If you disagree with me, let me know below in the comments. I'm Denton Day. I appreciate you stepping into my office. Follow me on Twitter. Now, respectfully, get out.